Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Novel Brain with Dr. E. Today I am going to be talking about the coming of a United States revolution, so stay tuned. Hello everyone and thank you for tuning in. We are now in a very, very interesting time. Obviously, probably one of the most unprecedented times in the United States history. It's now June 5th, Saturday, and I have been all around DC, sort of surveying what's been going on, taking notes, observing, and then as I've been doing that, just coming home and sort of researching different facets of the things that I've been seeing, the sort of 16, 17 different types of police in the DC area that could potentially be in front of you, as well as all the different other sort of unidentified people that might be in these protests. So I'm just here today to say I am happy to be here and I'm happy to be an American with the freedoms that I do have, but we still have to fight for our freedoms. And that's why I'm doing a podcast today, previous to going to a protest at 6 p.m. in Freedom Square about police presence. And, you know, I'm not much of an anti-person, but I've become so much more involved in anti-efforts, knowing that established efforts have been the wrong choice for this country. And in many ways, historically, political scientists have been really bad at foreseeing some of the most important developments. And I think it's time to kind of acknowledge this momentous event we just had in DC. Part of 16th Street become Black Lives Matter Plaza. This all happened before my very eyes. I was walking there earlier today. There's some footage of it on my website. There's some footage of it on some other things across the internet, but it's just fascinating. You know, we've got some really difficult times, but we've also got some things that are pushing really forward, in my opinion. And so what brings about a revolution? Well, of course, every revolution that we've had is pretty unique in the United States, and in comparison between them, we don't really always have insight. So some of the things that we need to look at as we approach this is what does cause the upheaval of a government and what does cause a revolution in favor of the people is definitely, first and foremost, a tremendous economic inequality. This is the one thing that we all have in common. We all need money to survive. I know I'm not going to talk about the differences of our politics, but it doesn't matter what political group you belong to. It doesn't matter what your ideology is. You have to know that economic inequality hits everyone, particularly the poor and now middle America. So we've got that going on. We've got the combined factors of deeply felt, widely shared sense of injustice. I've even posted on my own social media of an incident that occurred in 1994 where I took a knee to my neck as well as 45 to my temple, and I just needed to be transparent. That was not an easy decision for me to put that post up, but I'm glad that I did because I stand in solidarity for Black Lives Matter. I am Asian American, born in Minneapolis, and I stand for my brothers and sisters who have been wrongfully incriminated, wrongfully just the amount of crime that has been occurred by the people who are supposed to protect us is just unbelievable. So the coming of a revolution. All right, before most major revolutions, there's the substantial increase in a number of protests. And here in DC, we have no shortage, and across the world. So I'm researching every corner of the universe is now involved in some kind of major protest for not just George Floyd, but for the movements of Black Lives Matter, and for criminal injustice, and for the people, not for the state. So we are having this coming of this revolution in our favor, people. And I'm here to say I'm feeling a little positive for the first time in several days or maybe weeks. And to see the population of almost every major country support not just the United States, but the efforts that they know are right, because they know that that is the right side of history and how we make progress, is just really amazing. So we're seeing this display, well, much to the displeasure of all the people in power. But we're seeing the voice of our grievances through these marches, through petitions, through protests, through being in line. I was in line to vote for over 6 hours 2 nights ago, and that is insanity. It turned out I think there were 140 poll stations in D.C. that turned into 20 by the time it was time to vote. Now that's insanity, and I think that that was a lot of government control to show that they could really have power over the fact that we really are losing our own right to vote. There were lines blocks long. I mean, I went to several polling places, and this is just the insanity. So here we are in the coming of the revolution, and there's more to come. As I said, I'm going to a protest at 6 p.m. If you're out there in the DC land, you could make it if you leave now. This one's really important. And to me, I think it's important to stand up for your citizens' rights, not just by voicing your opinion, but by joining in solidarity with the people who have been affected, which now it's not just the black and the brown, it's almost everyone has been wrongfully affected at some point in their life by the power, by the police state, by the, the people who are really supposed to protect you. And this is the ultimate hypocrisy and the ultimate display of un-American values, is not to protect the people who are fighting for what needs to be just. So, I don't have all the answers, but I can only say this. There are so many things that have been unjust in this world as far as racial injustice. And this is not the forefront of it all. I think it really is embedded in class. So once you have that class established, yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter what color you are, as long as you have that $1 million plus or $1 billion plus. Now, of course, you're in this different class. So you can kind of pay your way through your life. Well, that's just not how it works. And this whole trickle-down economy, that's also not how it works. And for those of you who may be wondering, wow, Dr. Eusebio, are you this just like far leftist? Well, guess what? I have never once in my entire life had an affiliation in my voting process. So I guess you can just eat it. And maybe if you don't like it, you don't have to listen. But I'm not affiliated with any political party. I'm not really affiliated with any parties. And in fact, what I'm affiliated with is the Humanitarian Party. So I'm just really excited in some ways to announce that this revolution does feel very much real. And as Americans, with a broken economy, with this sort of toxic class divide, with this newer sort of indictment of capitalism, and potentially not just trying to find a new system, but finding solutions. I'm not standing by, what everybody wants to say, oh, you must be a socialist. Well, guess what, folks? A, you've been fed a lot of lies about what socialism is. And B, socialism does work in many countries. I think America is a little more complex and needs a new system that is not capitalism nor socialism. I personally really don't want to get too political on this, but I do want to report that there is so much to be remedied right now. The solution for any of this is not in my immediate future, but there are these sparks of energy that I do get, such as now, and I decided to pick up my podcast and kind of report my feelings about this, because I do think that we need to forecast what might be happening. I mean, it's already in this impending doom of a recession. We're already in an impending situation that's gone way too far with inequality in this country, based on classism and based on Jim Crow laws and based on laws that outdate America even, and how we were even established in the first place. So, if we're going to argue semantics, I think what's most important is to not downplay protest because you think that everybody out there is trying to loot. In fact, the very vast majority of people would not care to do that, and in fact are stopping people from doing that. And again, I don't know who's listening to this right now, but if you actually think that there aren't factions of people who are claiming they're Antifa, which is actually a non-existing organization, it's more of an ideology. If you think that there's people from Antifa that are in there in these protests just taking advantage of every point they can to try and steal things and loot and set things on fire, well, you're wrong, because that doesn't exist. The organization is not real. It is an ideology, and to call that a terrorist group is almost just blasphemy. All right, so what are we moving on to? Some of the largest protests in the history of this country. We survived the 50s and the 60s, and a lot of the things that occurred at that time were absolutely in civil rights, and now we have so many more complexities. So this is not only noticed in the Western United States, but across the world. And I think the support we're seeing from Spain, London, Italy, France, everywhere else in the world, they are really on our sides. They want to see us get through this, because they also know that these kind of things could occur in their own countries. And I believe at some point people really do feel bad for the United States right now. There's this lack of trust, and I know that even just in my daily interactions and with clients and with family and with neighbors, this is just kind of par for course. I understand that this is happening. I don't want to diminish it, but it's definitely something that's real right now. I know a lot of people can't trust what's going on, much less trust, fellow humans. So what you have to trust is that under all of this, and the underlying ethos to this entire situation that we're in, which is sort of pseudo post-COVID and pro-protest and, a lot of anti-riot, all this rhetoric. In this time, what we have to understand that there is an inherent good under this, and the majority of people want to see us succeed through this. And in order to do that, yes, we do have to protest. That is an American tenet. That is something that we need to do. Fight fascism, stand for the revolution, just stand back in awe that we now have a Black Lives Matter plaza in Washington, D.C., United States of America, that was officially coined this morning. If you want to go on my Facebook or my Instagram pages, I have footage of it. It is absolutely amazing, and might be one of those things. I definitely think it's one of those things that will go down in history, like Tiananmen Square, or, things that occurred where statues have come down of Saddam Hussein, or the wall in Berlin. We are in a historic time. So stand up, my fellow people, and see that we can together fight against racial injustice. We can fight against inequality. We can fight for our rights as citizens and humans to not be afraid and to not stand back and let things happen to us anymore. This is our time. It is our time as a political revolution. It is our time as a people to stand up and fight for peace, fight for that which we have. And just a disclaimer, I know I just mentioned that I'm headed to a protest at Freedom Square tonight at 6 p.m. Yeah, it is about police injustice. But at the same time, I'm going to go and I'm going to protest safely, peacefully, and with my friends and people that I know and I trust who can stand up and speak our minds and our truth for what we understand. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that not every protester is a rioter, but what's important to understand is that that is our civil right. So if anything, please understand, if you're listening to this podcast right now, do understand that this is your freedom of speech and this is your freedom to assemble and this is your freedom as a citizen. Nobody's trying to take those things away from you. But in fact, look at every one of these protesters and they are fighting for that right for you as well. So in this time, everyone, please be safe. Remember, the COVID-19 virus is not gone. Please do mask up. If you do get the chance to get out and speak your voice, please do give that some of your consideration. And as well as your friends and family, stay healthy, stay safe, be kind to one another, and do come back to more of the Novel Brain with Dr. E. I'll be doing a follow-up to a lot of this in the coming few days. Take care, all.